Welcome back to Blade and Sorcery, and today we are looking to see if the Citadel is actually a good Citadel. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, a working Citadel has to have about three main things to actually be considered good, which is the location, the defensibility, and then also the reasoning for its existence, as well as it has to have resources available to it for it to survive, such as like food and building materials. So with that being said, let's start with the most interesting, which is, well, the defenses themselves. Oh, also, if you enjoy this video at any part, make sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps out the algorithm. Thanks. Now, look, a Citadel being a Citadel, it's obviously meant to stop these random dudes from, well, attacking it. So we gotta look at if the Citadel actually has the right resources and, well, defenses to keep out random people like this, and then also any big armies that would, well, attack them. So first things first, we gotta look at where these random idiots would even, well, come from. So I think we should look into the location of this Citadel a little bit. And, well, as we can see, it is quite high above a very vast ocean, as well as right on the edge of a cliff, meaning that there's no real easy way to get up here unless you take the intended path. Or you would have to climb this big old mountain and somehow manage to get down here. Or climb this very, very steep rock face and then somehow get on top of the big lighthouse. But where is the intended path to get into the Citadel? Because, as you might know, it's a fighting game, not really an adventure game. So there is actually like no real way that we can get up here if we are, down on the bottom. So instead, we actually got to use our brains a little bit, which also brings us to a few other reasonings for what this Citadel is actually doing. So instead of starting from the defenses, we actually have to go all the way back to the reasoning as to why the Citadel even exists. But don't worry, it won't take too long. It's fairly simple. And it's right in front of us. So, from we could see from the location, this Citadel is basically just a stronghold. But what does a stronghold do? Well, it basically just is a fallback point for people in the area, which, as we can see, is right down here with this little out of bounds area. There is a burning village. Now, some could say, oh, well, the Citadel, it must not be a very good Citadel if it can't protect the village. But that's not really what a Citadel would do in this instance. Instead of being an actual protection, like, oh, that Citadel's gonna stop anyone from raiding the village, that Citadel's purpose would more like be if someone were to raid this village, which, by the way, looks pretty defendable, so it would be a pretty big army. The people of the village could go to the Citadel and stay there instead of dying in their village. So that seems to be the reasoning behind the Citadel. Now, why we actually looked at that instead of the defenses first, as I said, is because we have to find the entrance to the Citadel, which means we have to find why there would even be an entrance and where that would be. And why there needs to be an entrance is because the people from the village have to get to the Citadel somehow. That is its main purpose, so the people need to have a pretty easy way up there. And I think I've got it fairly figured out. Now, like I said before, because this game is a fighting game, it's not really an adventure game, we kind of have to piece some things together. So while there is no actual doorway that we can see to get up here, because the player, if I fell down here, I would just climb up this mountainside and get to the Citadel. However, random peasants are not going to be able to do that, so obviously that's not the case. So with that being said, how do those people actually get up here? Well, I think it's fairly simple. Using some context clues, we can also see that there are some paths into the mountain, like this is probably some sort of mine, as well as we can see that somehow this thing was built. This isn't just carved out of a mountainside. This is some actual just stone that people built here. So they would have to get the stone from somewhere, obviously, to build this, and what easier way than the mountain itself, as we can see with these bricks that are right next to another cave entrance. Now, like I said, in the game itself, we can't we can't actually get in here, but we see that it's there, and we know why in game it would be here. So, with all that being said, what my theory is that the town below has a path somewhere on this mountainside, like a cave, that goes up all the way to the Citadel. And then when we're in the Citadel, we can also sort of back up this claim. See, there are a few doorways in the Citadel. And like we've seen over here, we can't actually enter them, like this thing, but we know what would be inside of here. For instance, this big doorway. This is like the main hall, main keep, main fallback point of the Citadel. This is probably where any noble people would live if they fell back here. If they were staying in the Citadel for some reason. As well as the main stronghold of the Citadel. We also know that the lighthouse, there's no easy way up. The player has to parkour up here. However, there is a doorway on this side of the lighthouse, as well as a trap door up here, meaning that any, just normal lighthouse worker could just use this to get up to the top. Little things like that. So with all that being said, I believe that this door at the base of the Citadel is the main entrance to the keep. And through this door, it would lead down to a cave system. Basically just a one-way path that would lead out somewhere down here. Alright, so finally, I can say that we found the entrance to the Citadel. But why is that so important, right? I mean, why is the entrance to the Citadel one of the most important things for defending the Citadel? Well, like I said, there's only one way up, meaning this door is the only way to get up to the entire Citadel. So this is pretty important. See, because of the height, I think it's pretty obvious that no one can really get up here. The only dangers that they have from below is if boats like these, let's say, had some sort of catapult siege weapon on it and tried bombarding the Citadel itself. Now that is quite a distance, however I think it is possible with some advanced siege machinery. However, bombarding a Citadel will not take a Citadel. These are some pretty strong walls, very high, very protected, and very deep walls, you could say. So even just bombarding this for a year, it might bring down the lighthouse, but the Citadel still stands. You're not going to be taking it from bombarding. And you can't bombard men up here. You can't launch them out of catapults and get them up here to actually take the Citadel. As well as, like I said previous, you can't climb this thing, realistically. And if you got a team to try and climb this, an expert climbing team, they would just get shot down. Realistically, they are not getting up here. So, therefore, the door still is the only way up. So now let's look at the defenses. And it's also sort of like a imaginary siege scenario, you could say, where we are trying to see what would actually happen if an army broke through. So what would happen is a raiding party, or like a full-on army, whoever wants to take the Citadel, would attack the town. Now, the tunnel is not going to be very secret, because first of all, everyone's going to be running towards it. And then secondly, it has to be pretty noticeable, or else the random people in the town will forget where it is. Like if it's hiding behind a bush, right? People are going to forget. You can't just easily tell everyone. It's going to be pretty noticeable. Now, we don't know what the defenses would be in the tunnel. We don't know if there are defenses outside of the tunnel. So that doesn't really matter. What really only matters is if they break through this door, what's going to happen? Well, let's have a look. So, how do you get up to the top? Like, this is the main keep. Well, it's pretty simple. You got staircase up here, loops around, goes up to the top. And then over here, you also have a staircase that, well, sort of just loops around and goes up to the top. So how are you gonna defend this? Well, you got basically 2 choke points. And, let's just say it should have only been 1. So the first main choke point, the one that I think is the best, is this staircase. The staircase that comes all the way down here. Firstly, this would loop everyone to go on one direction, meaning that the defenders would also only have to be on focus on like one defensive position, rather than splitting them up into 2. And now we come up to the first staircase. This staircase is pretty wide. Maybe too wide, it doesn't really matter too much. And from here, there is still only one main way up. Like, realistically, no one's going up that way. But right away, we can see some amazing defensive positions. If we come up to the top part, we can see everything. If we get some bowmen up here, they can shoot whoever tries to come up. Really in any position. Even right out the main door. You can shoot them. And they can hardly shoot back. You know, we got some walls here. Not really the greatest defenses. As in, there are so many gaps. That doesn't really matter if you have enough archers. You can just pelt them. So you basically have every single angle on them. You know, you come over here. Still all the way. You can see them. You can see the enemy. You have the high ground. And you have some sort of wall defenses. It's just like, it's everywhere. There are walls everywhere where you could, you know, you could probably prepare a little bit before. You could maybe build up some wooden planks around the gaps. You know, just something. But you have so much vision. There are also things like throwing things down on them, right? This big wooden crate, boom, crushed somebody's head. Or rocks. I mean, this place has so many rocks. It's built into a literal mountain. Alright, also down here. This is a very looping, small section. Realistically, in full armor, you're only fitting about 3 men up this, you know, this stairway at a time. Meaning that the defenders only also have to have like 3 men, realistically, on this stairway to successfully defend against even like 1,000, right? You can only fit so many men on one stairway. Now, obviously, they're going to get overrun if it's 3 versus 1,000, but you get the idea. It could be 100 versus 1,000, and they could realistically hold this, especially if they have archers up there. So, very good chokeway. Amazingly defendable. Once you get up here, though, you know, now it's a little bit over. You lose this entire section of being able to pelt the enemy. But there's still another stairway, right? This one's a little bit wider, a little bit harder to defend. Now they have some walls as well. But still, pretty good. They get up here. Well, like, you know, now it's over. But now you have a very strong keep that you can defend. You know, some windows up there you could shoot out from. Just, you know, a little bit of things. So right away, if this was the entire fort, 10 out of 10, I'd gotta say. However, it's not. And this is where they mess up. Which is, well, none other than the second path. And oh dear, this thing kind of sucks. Alright, so second path. Right away, we can see an issue. Long stairway. Not bad. You know, that's a lot of area that, you know, the enemy in bulk could not push up. Like 5 men at a time. If you got a pretty strong force here, you know, like even just 50 versus 100 or 1,000 even, you know, you can hold this for quite some time. However, here is the issue. There's like no archer support, right? The main thing that you got is a single small little section over here where, yes, you can shoot their backs. That would be, that, you know, that'd be decent. But other than that, there's nothing. Like you can't really see them. So you know, that's a little thing. I'm sure it'll get better though, right? Right. All right. Well, let's say they get up here. It'd be pretty easy since, well, not too much archer support. So then we get over here, and well, now there's just nothing. You know, it'd just be men with pointy sticks versus men with pointy sticks. Whoever has the most men wins. You get a round back. Oh, well, now this is a big open area. Now whoever has the more men very easily will overrun anyone in this section. As soon as, like, any defense gets pushed back from, like, around this line, like, you gotta be dead sprinting up to those stairs. You cannot hold such an open area. And again, no archers. Nothing. You can't even, like, throw oil, rocks, anything. Nothing is going to be able to happen here. Long staircase. A little bit wider. Still, staircase is a staircase. But again, where are the archers? They're nowhere. Like, you got a wooden platform up here. Some might say, oh, this is going to be perfect. Where are the walls? Like, that's not going to work. Now, like, another thing you could say is like, oh, all this roof section. First of all, for the defenders, this is going to be terrible. Like, no traction on shingles, really. Like, you're going to be slipping and sliding. No walls, so they can shoot back at you. And then still over here, there's nothing. Like, you're not going to be able to get rocks up here to throw down on them. You're not going to be able to really build anything up here. And then, like, even on the top, it's still going to be pretty bad. On the top, you can't even see them. Like, realistically, this is not going to work. Alright, but it can't be that bad, right? It'll get better. This side, they would be defended, right? Well, now you're on the top floor. And, well, that's not very good. See, here's the issue, right? If one side falls, the other side falls as well. Realistically, you would have to put 90% of your men on this side, 10% on this side. Because if that side falls, now your backs are turned to the enemy. They would overrun this entire side. This entire side, perfect. 10 out of 10. That side is a 1 out of 10. Like, this side is terrible. You'd have to put all your men here, which would mean that this side would probably also fall. Because, like I said, it's got some walls, some good positions. But this relies on you having a decent amount of men, you know, to cover this. But the instant that you put most of your men back here, this side, dunzo. And then both sides would just collapse. Which is just not good at all. So, I mean, it's a little bit funny, you could say. Now, one more thing to address, which is the lighthouse. Is the lighthouse a good defendable spot? In short, absolutely not. It's got like no walls, no nothing. You can't even put people really up on the top. Just forget completely about the lighthouse. So yeah, this place would absolutely suck. Meaning that, yes, realistically, They would use this as the keep. They would not care about the lighthouse at all. Maybe put like a few men up there just to shoot. But that's going to fall. So yeah, now we only got this section down here. That's the only thing. And then a terrible keep. Like I had such high hopes for this castle, or whatever you want to call it, Citadel. But it doesn't do a good job at being a Citadel. Like I don't know why. They messed up on this back part. But yeah, realistically, this is a fighting game. This is not a deep dive into the way that this would work in real life. However, that's what we do on this channel. We look at cool little funny castles in video games that probably should not be looked at this way. And then we say, it's a good castle, or it's a bad castle. And in this instance, this is probably like a 5 out of 10, realistically. So, to sum it all up, location, amazing. The reasoning, amazing. The resources, also pretty amazing. But the defenses, it's half good, half bad. So with all that being said, I think a good 5 out of 10 is, pretty reasonable for this Citadel. So anyways, again, thanks for sticking to the end of the video. If you enjoyed my endless yapping about a castle, then make sure to hit that subscribe button and like the video, as it helps out a lot. Anyways, until next time.